billowing through the mangroves is this scream, and I'm like, she screams in British. Like, there was an accent to her scream.
I remember when I got off, you even scream with an accent.
Like, it was...
Hello, 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 and welcome to Well Shit. It really is that simple. I'm Claire.
And I'm Serena. On this podcast, we help you to understand about your 12 universal needs, why they are currently not being well met,
how to meet them in ways that work for you, and how to consistently do so in quick, easy, and simple ways that fit seamlessly into your life.
We'll also help you to understand how doing so will have a positive ripple effect in literally every area of your life.
If you like what you hear, please support us on Patreon.
And enjoy the show.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hey, everybody.
So I don't have anything massively exciting to share today, but I know you do. You had a fun day yesterday, didn't you?
I did. I went skydiving for the second time, so it wasn't my first time, but it was such a cool way to see the island. We've talked about before, it's a 2x4. It's a small island.
2x4 island. I've got this image in my head of a 2x4.
Well, it was really weird. I mean, we've seen it coming in, obviously coming into the airport here. Mm-hmm. You see the islands coming in, but something about the level and the size of the plane that we were in, mm-hmm. It really made me think, I actually said it to the instructor that I was jumping with. I was like, wow, no wonder why everybody knows everything on this island. He's like, yeah, from up here, you really see how tiny small it is.
Yeah.
The big neighborhoods, from above, it's
big neighborhoods in lots of inverted commas.
Right. Big neighborhoods, when you're here, you're the ant. But up above, it's like, holy shit, that's tiny. But it was just, I have I'm an adrenaline enthusiast. Mm-hmm. I love things that give me experience and that kind of...
I think you're a bit of both. I think you're an adrenaline and an experience enthusiast. Because I'm definitely an experience enthusiast. I'm not necessarily... I was going to say I'm not really an adrenaline enthusiast, but I'm just realizing that I'm a fire walking instructor. I'm a glass walking instructor. Mm-hmm. I think there was a period where... And that's interesting, actually. That's the interesting thing about it. There was a period in my life where I think I was trying to prove something to myself. They were things that it was cool to do them, mm-hmm. but at the same time... I'm not sure whether I wanted to do them to try to prove something, not just for the experience of doing them. And I think that these days I'm definitely an experience enthusiast. I'm not so much on the adrenaline. Sometimes that's a part of it, but I think you tend more in that direction than I do.
Yeah, I know if there's something that I want to do, it might be 50-50, because if Claire doesn't, if I'm like, want to jump out of a plane? She'd be like, no, I don't. I'd be like, okay.
Nope.
It was really interesting, though, yesterday, as I was, getting ready to jump, I actually took a minute and I was like, wow, there's almost no adrenaline running through me at this point. I was like, I'm going to step out onto this ledge and then I'm going to free fall.
Oh, I would definitely be adrenaline pumping.
Well, and it's funny because we watched the videos and I was smiling, and the entire time, there was no hesitation, my breathing was normal. And then you see my husband's video, who, I have to give this guy...
He has a healthy respect for heights.
He does. And that comes from a
solid respect for heights, just realizing. I'm trying to stop using the word healthy.
Yes. As we mentioned before, it's an ableist term, so we are trying to switch our language mm-hmm. out of that. He originally did, the first time we went skydiving is because he has a fear of heights, mm-hmm. and sometimes debilitating, or not completely debilitating, but enough. He would get anxious. Yeah. And this time he's like, it was such a different experience. It was a lot of fun, but you can still see in the video, it's like, are you going to be is he okay? It's just and I'm like, all right, just step out of the plane. And I realized afterwards, I was like, that's kind of weird.
What's really funny is that I'm going on vacation in a week or two, we're going to some theme parks, and I've been looking at some of the roller coasters going, shit, that looks high. Like, I'm like I know I'm going to be feeling like probably Joe was on a roller coaster. Like, the plane, jumping out of it, it's not really my thing.
Well, and then we were watching the videos, and I told my instructor, I'm like, there's not much you can do, like, that's gonna startle me. Like, if you want to have fun out there, I'm the person to do that with. And he goes, I kind of got that about you, but noted. So we're watching my video where he's letting me free fall, like I'm flying the parachute, and he's like, drop this arm, now drop this arm, and we're swirling, and we're like, it looks out of control, but it was very controlled. And then Joe's like, well, I didn't do that. I'm like, I believe my energy was probably saying, let's do some of this stuff. And just your like,
let's get to the ground in one piece.
And you can see when he finally did start like relaxing into it. But I'm like, your instructor is not going to be like, oh, let's try this fun thing and watch him maybe
scare the crap out of this guy.
Possibly freak out. Like, it was kind of, we knew that wasn't, my instructor knew that wasn't going to happen to me. I'm like, can you make the parachute just stop working for a second and then catch it? And he's like, no.
Let's not do that. It's funny because I've actually never done parasailing, and it's one of the things that I want to do here on the island, because I'm like, that one I'm okay with. Like, I'm especially not good with free falls. Like, that's the thing. I remember that last time we went to Orlando, and we were at one of the theme parks, and I was sat next to my sister. We were on this particularly high roller coaster, and I was like, we're still going up. We're still going up. I'm like, we're near the top, and I'm like, can I get off now? She's like, nope. So I'm like, okay, we get to the top now. And it's so funny because I'm someone, I think there's something sensationally in my body that like drops just have a particular impact on my system in a way that maybe don't for other people. So it builds this kind of pressure in my stomach. So I'm like, I have to release, I have to scream. Like, I have to scream to get rid of this sensation. And the funny thing was, we were so high up, like I got 2/3 of the way down the fall, and I ran out of air. And my sister's like, she ran out scream 2/3 of the way down. I'm like, she's not wrong.
Was it a British scream?
It was a British. It was a British scream.
I'll never forget the first year that Claire and I started hanging out together. Like, we really hadn't completely connected at that point. We were just in the same friend circle. Yeah. And we did a haunted kayak ride through the mangroves, and for Halloween.
For Halloween, yeah.
And it was, I mean, they did it really well. We had scuba divers that were like under the kayaks and stuff. And
people would like jump out of the water or out of the mangroves, and
And it was It was funny because I worked at this marina.
I'm also a scaredy cat, so it's like if like everything makes me jump, like I'll scream at anything. Like it's just like it's just how I am. Like I'm easily spooked. Let's put it that way.
And I was like, oh, I hope this is scary, but I work there, so I know the layout of the mangroves, and I know all the people that are involved in it. So it's like they're trying to scare me. I'm like, Catherine, you're not scary. You're the nicest thing. And I couldn't quite get my head out of it in that situation, which usually I'm pretty good at. But
that was not the case for me.
I had already gone through, and we were waiting for the rest of our group, and billowing through the mangroves is this scream, and I'm like, she screams in British. Like, there was an accent to her scream.
I remember when I got off, you even scream with an accent.
Like, it was... And for me, at that point, interconnectedness, all of those things, I was getting so much, like, I don't want to say joy out of it. I was like...
You were getting a kick out of it.
I was getting a kick out of it. And now I'm like...
Well, also, I don't think at that point you knew me well enough to know that I was really scared.
Like, it wasn't just like... she could be scared
like having the... Like, there's the people like being scared for fun thing.
Which is
Which is you. And that was easily could have been the case. But I don't think you would have realized at that point, no, I was terrified. And I don't remember. I got up and I was like, I'm not doing that again. I was like, one and done. That's it. So anyway, I mean, all excitement and British screams aside, should we crack on?
Yeah, we have a podcast.
We have a podcast to record today. So I love that these little like blurbs at the beginning are getting longer and longer. There is often need stuff related in there, so I feel okay about that. So today we are talking about something that is something that you kind of generally know, But something that we had a very visceral experience of recently, and that is how it is never a good idea to go past your capacity. Now, I'm deliberately using the word never. You know, I didn't say never go past your capacity. I said it's never a good idea to go past your capacity. And that's true. And the reason that we had an experience with this recently was we've shared about this on a couple of previous podcasts. We were involved in a fundraiser for a local nonprofit down here called Queer Keys. And we got brought onto we met the people who were on the board like a few weeks before the actual fundraiser happened. So we didn't even know about the nonprofits before then. Not really. And so it was only at the last minute that we kind of got involved. And I sort of said, and I remember when they put the tickets out, I'd only just recently connected with one of the co-founders. And I messaged him and I was like, do we buy tickets to the event or are you going to need volunteers? I said, we're still happy to donate to the event, but we didn't want to take tickets from people who were not going to be volunteers, so we wanted to make sure they could make as much money as possible. So he was like, oh no, he said, if you could be volunteers, that would be amazing. And I kind of gave him some ideas and suggestions on the things that we might be able to get involved in and things we could help with. And so he said, great. So we got very heavily involved in the last maybe 3 weeks, I think it was, before the event. And we were asked to help with the silent auction predominantly, as well as a few other things, but predominantly we got asked to help with the silent auction. Now, we are not people who do things by house. I remember afterwards, the funny thing is that he said to me after the event, he said, oh, the silent auction, he said, I thought it was just going to be a table with a few things on it.
No.
That's not how we do things. And especially because this is such an amazing cause and such an amazing nonprofit that we really wanted to support them in making as much money as possible. So we decided to do what we do, which is to go
big.
all out. Going home's not an option. You know, the whole go big or go home, it's just go big or go bigger. It tends to be with us. Like we tend to do things a little extra. And so that's what we did. And we pulled out all the stops. And as we were kind of navigating through this time, we had some stuff that we had to do for ourselves as well. And I remember us having the conversation, like, we're kind of doing more on this than we would normally do. And we were aware that on the actual event itself, that we would need to, it would be a good idea for us to be there to help set up the venue and everything. And especially because we ended up with 45 lots, I think it was.
Yeah, 45 packages.
Yes, 45 lots, each of which was a package which had multiple items in, with the exception of the fact we had a few art pieces that were individuals. So we made the art pieces individuals, but we had over $20,000 worth of donations, and including, funnily enough, including a skydive, as we've been talking about it today, stays in hotels, events, vouchers for going out to eat, there were a whole range of different things. And so because we had 45 lots that we had to display, like, it's going to take us a while to do this. And what we actually did was we ended up where the back of the theatre that the event was happening in was wrapped basically with all of the lots for the auction. So we got there about 10 in the morning and we didn't get done. I think we got back home at 5 a.m.
Yeah,
something like that. We had an after party and everything.
Yeah, so we closed down, and that was one of the nights where the owner was like, ladies, we're like, we just need to take a picture of the clock. And he's like, take your picture and go home.
Okay. Actually, as I recall, it wasn't even him kicking us out. As I recall, the bartender was also kicking him out of his own bar.
True. That is true. And I think to lessen the effect of him getting kicked out, he had to kick somebody else out. So I mean,
and we're happy for that. To be honest, like, we're regulars there. It's not a problem. So and we kind of knew a few days before the event that we were really pushing ourselves to get this to be what it needed to be. And it actually took a lot more work at the last minute because we had to make all the lot sheets, we had to make the bid sheets, we had to make the bit to promote all the things that we had to package them up into like little gift bags and everything. So I remember, like, I think the night before, I think I was up until about 2 a.m. like putting together. So this is the day before the event. And I remember sort of us having a conversation a couple of days before going, Like this is more than we probably currently have the capacity for. And I know that we both want to make sure that this is going to be an incredible event, and it's their first event. So we want to kind of set the standard for like how this organization does events. And we also knew we had some time the following week in which we could recover our capacity. So we made a choice, like a very deliberate choice of, okay, this is not, we're like doing what we do. We cannot compromise our needs and compromise our capacity without being aware of it. Like that's not something it's like, oh, whoops, how did that happen kind of thing. We know when we're doing it, and we made a conscious decision that, okay, we're going to choose to do it on this occasion. We're going to be exhausted at the end of it, but it's okay because we've got a couple of days on the other side that we can just rest and do what we need to. We can build back our capacity. And it was good in theory.
Yeah, it was nice to think like, we'll have the time after to rebuild the capacity that we don't have in this moment.
Mm-hmm. And initially we did.
Yes.
So you can obviously share, you want to share how you dealt with like the couple of days after the event?
It really all is such a blur because we thought we were going to have time, and that didn't actually end up happening for me. Mm-hmm. Where all of a sudden I got hit with one thing and then another thing, and I had a dance performance on the weekend, so then there were all sorts of rehearsals, and then one rehearsal turned into 2 rehearsals, turned into 3 rehearsals, turned into, okay, we need to get together an hour before, and then it was another performance the next night. And all of this time that I was going to be recovering, I ended up
rehearsing. Yeah.
So I took my low capacity. I'm like, well, I just need to get through this weekend.
Yeah.
And then the next week came, and it got hit, and I got hit. And
well, the interesting thing is that weekend that you had all the performances, we also had a mutual friend whose birthday it was. So there were a lot of things kind of going on to celebrate that birthday. And that then led to the next hit.
COVID.
So Serena got COVID again at one of those celebrations. So now she was already at a low ebb. She thought she was going to have time to recover. She didn't. She got more on top of it. Then she got sick on top of it. So when she got COVID, she went down. And I mean, like down and out. There were several days where I didn't hear anything from her, which is actually quite unusual for us. Normally we're in contact maybe every other day, but most days we will kind of check in at some point. Normally there's like, hey, I've done this in this folder, or I've sent you this email, or what have you.
There's always something, whether it's a touch point just as friends or business or something. But I went down for 2 weeks, like 2 solid weeks of just.
And having had COVID before, that wasn't your experience the last time you had it to quite that extent, was it?
Not in that way. I mean, just the pure exhaustion.
Yeah.
And it was the compoundedness of, well, I kind of got to that point. I'm like, well, what did I really expect? Like,
right. Well, and the interesting thing is that I knew I had at least, I had a good 2 or 3 days. One after on the back of the event, and the first 2 days. We've even shared about it on a previous podcast. Someone tried to tell me I was meant to get out and enjoy the fresh air. And I was like, no, screw you. I'm staying in bed. And the first 2 days, that's literally what I did. I stayed in bed. I just rested. I went from bed to bathroom to door to get delivery, back to bed to eat, and back to bed again. Like that was literally it for 2 days. And then on the third day, I had a personal situation came up where there was an issue with somebody I knew, and that ended up like hitting me. And then I had something else happen, and that hit me. And then I had something else happen, and that hit me. And it was interesting how I'd even taken a couple of days to recover, quote unquote recover. And I got back some of my capacity, but I didn't get back to the capacity I was at before the event. And I certainly didn't get back to the capacity I needed to be able to cope with the other things, because there was a bunch of other things. I didn't even make it to the friend's birthday, as it turned out, a good thing, because I probably would have got COVID, same as a number of people did at that event. But then, because Serena went down with COVID, I was then carrying the TUN can by myself. So I wasn't able to go completely down either because things needed to keep ticking over with the business. So the interesting thing is that even though I did have some time to recover, it wasn't enough for the capacity that I used at that event. And the thing about, so this is the thing, is that even if you can plan for, okay, I know I've got time, I can recover from this afterwards. The thing is, life happens.
You don't say.
Shit happens. And you don't know what's coming down the pike. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't know what it is that you may end up having to deal with, like, on top of things. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit like, it reminds me a little bit of like somebody who's living kind of day to day in terms of their finances with no savings, no safety net. And obviously, like, making clear that there is a certain privilege, is an inherent privilege in being able to get to the point where you have some savings, where you're not having to live hand to mouth. Mm-hmm. If you are somebody who's not in that situation where you're having to live hand to mouth, but you're choosing to because of how you engage with funds and finances, and it's like you might be fine, and then all of a sudden something comes along and you have this massive expenditure that you were not expecting, but you haven't got the capacity for that expenditure, and that then puts you like under the line, and it then means you're in a struggling place again. The thing is, we don't know when and how severely those things are going to come. And the same thing is true with our needs. It's like, yeah, okay, we can make a conscious choice. I'm going to allow these needs to be compromised in order to get to do this thing, which also meets my needs, obviously, because we wouldn't be doing it if it didn't. And so it's like, okay, I'm going to take this hit on my needs, but I've got this space, so I'm going to be able to rebuild those needs, so everything's going to be fine again, without realizing we don't know what other things in terms of adulting and life are going to come along. And it's like, well, that's going to impact needs, and this is going to impact needs, and this is going to impact needs. And if you're already at a deficit, it's so much harder to navigate through those things. It's so much harder because now you're kind of on this kind of like hamster wheel. What is that noise? Oh, I think there's some work being done in one of the houses back there. I was like,
it's like a creepy ghost knock somewhere.
Like, we're not doing the mangroves again. I've already said that. Don't know what that is. So the thing about it is that we don't know what the other things are going to, other things that are going to come along, they're going to impact those same needs. And then it's like, you don't have the capacity to deal with the things that are coming along, so that's going to compromise your needs even more, which means that you don't have the time to recover those needs. And so you're then dealing at an even lesser capacity. So dealing at a lesser capacity means you're going to compromise your needs even more. And you end up in this kind of downward spiral. And normally sometimes people end up having to get sick. I give you Exhibit A. Sometimes people it just takes so much longer to recover from these situations. And that's the thing, is if you go to that place where you are compromising your capacity, it makes you incredibly vulnerable to that happening.
Well, and you had mentioned that, you can actually deplete the same need further, or it impact that need. You also don't know what other needs are going to come up. So right. Claire had given herself the space to rest. She's like, I know I have these couple of days that I could rest. What she wasn't expecting was the impacts to her emotional needs, her value needs, her personal power needs. All these other needs were taking the hit, which, because there was a baseline, like luckily she had those 2 days of rest, because if you hadn't had those, then on top of that, but you could, I still
needed further rest after that. I wasn't like fully rested.
2 weeks of rest.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's hitting those resources of not being rest, and then when all these other needs are getting impacted, usually rest is one of the ones that automatically takes a hit, your foundation function, because these things are swirling, you're feeling them.
It takes energy to be in the presence of those things. Just to navigate, just to be in the experience of them takes energy to do so. You're going to need more rest and to build the energy to deal with the things. Yeah, absolutely. So, and it's interesting how like it's actually become like this whole thing of like pushing past your capacity, doing more than you have the capacity for. This has actually become a verb now in both of our households. It's like, oh God, you're not queer keysing it, are you? And it's like, no, I'm not queer keysing it. Don't worry. There's balance here. And it's like, but it's almost acting as that reminder to us of like, oh, okay, remember what we did in that situation. And we did it mindfully. We did it consciously, intentionally. Now, I have been in situations in the past. In fact, there was another nonprofit which I did similar sort of thing for many years ago, but I didn't do it consciously. I did it as a way of trying to get other needs met. And I wasn't going, yes, I'm going to make this decision to do this because I have this time to recover, because I didn't have time to recover back then. So we did this time with intention.
Right. And for the cause, we weren't trying to meet our value need or our love need. We weren't trying to meet our needs through doing this. It met many of our needs.
Yes and no.
You tell.
Well, so yes, in the sense that we were not dependent on this situation to have our baseline needs met. And one of the needs that sits in the branches of the tree, that sits in the 8 to 12, is about giving and contributing outside of ourselves. So yes, it was meeting our needs. It wasn't, but I think the key, obviously we say everything you do every second of every day is done to meet your needs. So of course we were meeting our needs by doing it. I think that the slight tweak I would suggest to what you just said is we weren't dependent on doing this thing for this charity to get our baseline needs met.
That.
Sorry, carry on. I had to just like,
yeah, no, that.
We sound like we're contradicting ourselves here.
We do not want to do that.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
You did, but it was a good interrupt, so it was worth it.
You were saying that we weren't meeting our needs by doing...
Like, we didn't, as Claire said, we didn't need to do this to feel valuable and have other people be like, wow, look what you did. We did
Aren't
this.
You amazing? Yeah.
Right. And that's a lot of times when it comes to these types of things, that's where we unconsciously start to stop acknowledging where our capacity truly is.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, if I do it this way, well, like all of a sudden the weight of the event comes on you, the weight of everybody's opinions, all this weight. And luckily, we really didn't have that weight, but we had the capacity that was like, hey, I'm kind of tired.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, yes, I'm going to do 10 minutes of rest now, and then in 3 days, you're going to get 2 days to rest. But don't queer keys it is now kind of that reminder, like, remember, life can happen outside,
at any time.
At any time.
Like,
you don't know what's going to come. So make sure that you have the capacity for
whatever might come.
Whatever might come, including where you're at currently. So if you're at really low capacity, it's kind of like the reserves in the tank. You don't want to go there, but you need to make sure you still have that just in case you have to.
Well, it's interesting because I was speaking to someone this morning, and the analogy I used in terms of the actual need itself is that if you imagine that the need being neither met nor unmet is at ground level, if your need is unmet, you're dropping into a hole. If your need is being met, you're kind of climbing a ladder that's rooted on the ground. The thing about it is that in this situation, we went, oh, okay, it's fine. We can drop into the hole a little bit because we have time to climb ourselves back up. I mean, and in reality, our need was, we were already partway up the ladder when we started this. Like our need for rest was well met to begin with. And then we were like, okay, so we're going to use some of that need. So we're back at ground level now. And it's like, okay, now we're going to go to the point where the need is unmet. We're going into the hole a little bit, but it's okay because we've got time to climb out of the hole on the other side of this situation. It's fine. So what happened is that we got into the hole a little bit, and then all of a sudden these situations like hailstorm happened, and we ended up like getting bombarded by stuff that pushed us further down the hole. And it's like, oh, hold on a second, I'm further down the hole now. Oh God, this feels like a lot. It feels much further to get out of the hole. And then the rain came, or whatever it was, like other things came and happened that pushed us further and further down the hole. And the thing about it is if we'd started even just at ground level, if we hadn't gone past that ground level, it's like, okay, well, I'm not up the ladder anymore, but at least I'm still on the ground. I've got the ground is underneath me. I've got a solid base, and now I can just pause here for a second, and then I can start climbing again. But once you start to get in the hole, it's actually quite hard to climb back up again because you don't have the energy because you've been holding on to the sides of the hole. It's like, oh God, I don't want to fall. I don't want to fall. I don't want to fall. Okay, I'm holding on here. But even just staying there in the unmet need takes energy. So you end up sort of slipping further down the hole if you're not doing something to replenish those needs again. And then you end up in the bottom of the hole, and it's like, oh shit.
And then you're so tired. You're like, I'm just gonna lay here for a bit because if I even like think about getting out of this hole, and you end up in the hole longer, and it's like,
well, the interesting thing is that the just laying there sometimes is the rest, which kind of naturally moves you up the hole a little bit, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna rest a little bit more. But it takes that while, and how it feels when you have an unmet need versus how it feels when your need is neither met nor unmet, feels very different. Like the experience of doing life from, okay, my need isn't met right now, but it's also not being compromised right now. Okay, it's okay. It's easier to navigate life from there than it is from in the bottom of the hole. Like just doing life in the bottom of a hole is so much harder. And it's much easier if you get a little bit up the ladder and it's like, oh, look, up from up here, I can see all these things and I can access more things from up here and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, it just feels different from being in that place. And so just the experience of life at that point becomes a very, very different beast. And then when you have these other things that are being thrown at you at the same time, it's like, oh crap, I didn't realize, no one told me there was hail forecast for today.
Right, but if you hadn't got yourself into that hole, you would have saw the cloud coming and you're like, oh wait, yes. I see you coming.
I need to get under cover.
Right. Instead, you're in the hole, you're down below the eye level and you're like, well,
and you can't get cover because there's nowhere to go.
Well, and it's like, well, it's sunny right here. I'm looking up at the imaginary hole, and I don't know if you can hear me at all. But we've talked about the weather in the Keys. Like, 1 minute it's sunny, 1 minute it's downpouring, and like one side of the street can be sunny and one side can be downpouring. So you're in your hole and you're like, oh, it's sunny. And then it's like, you might look up and you're like, well, it's a little cloudy. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, fuck. Like, where did this come from? I don't even have an umbrella. Like, you can't resource yourself at all. Because maybe we wouldn't have gone for cover. Maybe we'd be like, actually, I just need an umbrella. And that will help me. And doing little teeny things to meet those needs.
Or to stop the needs from being compromised.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing. So it's like, it's just, and this is the thing is that, yes, there are times in which we make these choices. We make difficult choices. We've talked in the past about the glass balls and the plastic balls. And I can't remember which episode that is. I'll put it in the show notes. I'll go and check. But we talk about the fact that when you're juggling lots of different balls, sometimes you need to let a plastic ball drop in order to catch a glass ball. And sometimes that plastic ball that gets dropped is a little bit of your capacity. It may be your foundation function need that gets dropped momentarily to catch this glass ball over here. But then actually that becomes a glass ball. It's like, okay, now we really have to take care of this. So I have to drop something else. That's okay. So we're aware of these things. But if you are dropping below your capacity line, like sometimes we have to make these decisions because something happens in life. We get an emergency phone call that someone we know is in the hospital and we drive through the night to get there when normally we get a full night's sleep and then drive the following morning. Because of our needs are constantly moving and changing depending on life situations, there are things that's like, oh, okay, I need to do this because this is going to meet my need. Or actually I need to do this because this is going to better make my need. There are going to be these moments, but this is the reminder that it is never a good idea to go past your capacity. And if you do that, it's a priority to recover it as quickly as possible afterwards. Because if you don't do that, you're operating from this unresourced place, which means that things are going to hit you harder. They're going to have a greater toll on you. We go back to we talk about the Star Trek analogy. In terms of the shields, if you have no capacity, your shields are fully down, which means that every hit, it's going to blast the ship. It's going to cause damage. Whereas if you've got capacity, that's when your shields are up. It's like, oh, the shield's going to take a hit, but okay, we can replenish that. So this is why it's so important that if you are going past your capacity, you are vulnerable. The things that are going to come your way are going to hit you harder. The impact is going to go deeper, and it's probably going to take more time to recover from. So if possible, try always to remain within your capacity. And if you cannot, make sure that you go as briefly into it, or as smallly into it. What's the word I'm looking at? Into it as little as possible. There we go. That will work. That you go under your capacity as little as possible, and you recover it as quickly as possible afterwards, so that you don't end up making yourself vulnerable to these other impacts.
Well, you had mentioned the glass balls and plastic balls analogy, and it kind of made me think of when I went through my topical chemo treatment. I on our Universal Needs page and on our our Facebook page and website, we have my story, and I had mentioned,
and we did a podcast on it as well.
Did we?
Yeah.
So many podcasts.
so many podcasts, so little memory.
That's sounds about right. I talked about the plastic balls and the glass balls and how before that concept, like I'd be like, but I'm a glass ball, and I'm not. I'm a crystal ball. Like I'm more delicate. I am more important than the glass balls. Like I am the ball I need to protect. And sometimes I may choose to place myself down on the ground for a moment, which is going beyond my capacity or making the conscious choice. Like this may negatively impact me, and this is why, and this is what I'm doing it for. But so many times, like what will happen is it's like, okay, well, I see myself, I'm that crystal ball, and you place it down, and then somebody comes and steps on it or kicks it away, or something falls from the sky and then it's cracked because the things that you didn't plan. It's like, no, but I placed myself down here so gently, like I was mindful about it, and then this squirrel came about and just ran away with it, like, and now I don't have a ball, like,
damn squirrel.
Or in the past, I would be holding myself as the crystal ball, and it's like I put it to my knee, and it's like, all right, I got to drop it. And then, I mean, even from a short distance, dropping...
It's going to have an impact.
It's going to have an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is just a gentle reminder from our own experience. And as we say, we're students of this work as much as we are teachers and guides on it. And we are learning about it all the time. And as I said, this was something where it's like, okay, we're making this conscious decision to do this in a way that feels in alignment with our needs as best as it possibly can be. And even then, it was like, yeah, nope, that's not a good idea. And we will learn from this experience, and we will make sure that going forward, we're not going to be quick-easing things in the future.
No,
definitely not. Anything you want to add for today before we finish?
I'm good.
Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being with us. We hope you found this as helpful as certainly a revelation for me, and
yes,
definitely very helpful for us. So we hope you found it helpful too. Remember to stay safe, and between now and next time, to remember to keep meeting your needs. Lots of love. Bye.
Bye, friends.
That's it for today.
If you like what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and give us a written review,
as it will help more people find us. And remember, it's never a good idea to go beyond your capacity.
Well, shit. It really is that simple.